Good evening and welcome to tonight's Meadville Tribune Forum for the candidates running for Crawford Central School Board in the election November 7th. We want to welcome the audience here at the Vernon Township Building, as well as those watching on Armstrong Cable and those listening on Cool 101.7 FM. I'm Rick Green, the editor of the Meadville Tribune, and with me is Keith Gushard, one of the paper's reporters. Before we start, I would like to ask everyone here, please take a moment to turn off any cell phone they may have with them so as not to create a distraction. Thank you. We appreciate the candidates for appearing this evening to be questioned about important issues facing the Crawford Central School District and the students and parents in the Meadville and Cochranton areas. With us this evening are Donald Sacco, Jan Filippa, Melissa Burnett, Ross Prather, and Paula Jo Lynch. Eric Warner, the sixth candidate, will not be with us this evening. He contacted the Tribune this afternoon and advised us he would be unable to make it due to his work as a union steward with Local 23 of the United Food and Commercial Workers Union. Now we will turn it over to the candidates. We will allow each candidate up to a 2-minute introduction to introduce themselves, and then we'll begin questioning each candidate. Each candidate will have up to 2 minutes to answer the question. We have drawn lots to see who goes first with the introduction, and then we will begin questioning with that same person and then alternate.
Jan, you're first up, and you have up to 2 minutes for an opening statement.
Okay, thank you. I would first like to thank the Meadville Tribune for providing this opportunity for all of us. For those of you who do not know me, I have been a lifelong resident of Meadville. I attended Crawford Central Elementary and Secondary Schools and graduated from MASH in 1970. My children attended and graduated from the district, and now I have grandchildren in the district. So I have a very vested interest and heartfelt feeling towards the district. Education has always been near and dear to my heart. After graduating from Meadville, I went on and got a degree in speech and language pathology and then special education as a master's. I began working in 1973. And I was a teacher for 25 years and then an administrator for 10 years. I also did adjunct work as a professor at Edinburgh University. So when I retired about 5 years ago, I decided going towards becoming a board member would be a nice way for me to give back to the community that I was raised in. I feel that with my background, I can bring a multifaceted approach to the decision-making process. I have served on the Crawford Central School Board for 1 term, and while doing so, I really diligently work to ensure a vision that all students have the opportunity to learn and develop into positive contributing citizens as they enter into our ever-changing world. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ross?
Thank you. My name is Ross Prather. I am a local attorney who has been on the school board in the past. I was on the Crawford Central School Board from 2001 to 2009, and I was the president of the school board for about half of that time. And recently, I just decided that I wanted to participate on a local level and do something, and I thought about my strengths, and I decided that the school board would be the best thing for me to possibly get back into. Education has always been something which I consider one of my strengths, something that I've been interested in for a long time. At one point in my life, I was going to go into education. I actually have a master's degree from Brown University in education. I have taught secondary school in Providence when I was at Brown, and I've also maintained contact with education issues here in Meadville, in my practice, and in my community involvement. And so I feel like I can contribute best in education and on the school board. Another thing about why I wanted to be on the Crawford Central School Board is because I feel like I understand the challenges and the possibilities, both of those things, which are very important. Being in the education business today is a very challenging endeavor. We all want, everyone at this forum tonight wants to present to our students the best education possible. Everyone in this forum also wants to make sure that we don't spend too much money. But those are very difficult things to deal with, and I feel like with my background I can do that sort of a thing.
We have to cut you off there. We do have 2 minutes, and that timer is there. We are flashing a little bit of a yellow card when they have 30 seconds to go, and then the red card's kind of like soccer. You got to stop. So we appreciate that. Melissa?
Hi,
whenever you're ready.
I'm excited to seek re-election to the Crawford Central School Board this evening. I too am a lifelong resident of Crawford County in Meadville. I'm the mother of two wonderful children, one sitting here with me tonight. They're both graduates of MASH. I too am a graduate of MASH here. I'm happy also that both of my children have returned to Meadville after college as productive members of our community. Education is certainly a priority for me. I believe that educational excellence for all students must be our priority. And over the past 4 years, it's been my honor to support teachers, administrators who are working hard to provide a quality education for all our students, and also to help raise academic achievement. I think the formula for ensuring all students to reach their fullest potential and become productive members of our society is to promote high expectations and also character building. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul?
Hi, everybody. I'm Paula Jo Lynch. I am not a lifetime member of the Crawford County residents. I actually grew up over in Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania, and went to college at Kutztown University for my elementary education early childhood degree. I am currently going for my master's in art therapy and counseling, clinical counseling, in order to best help not just myself, as you know, education does help your own self, but also as a proponent and a way into an educational system. And I'd also like to help the community grow and support our families and our students. I'm actually running as a commoner. I don't have the background as everybody else does up here as sitting on the board previously or current. And I'm not running angry. I don't have a situation or a problem with the Crawford County Board. In fact, I think that they are really doing well together, and you can tell off camera that there's a camaraderie and a respect in between everybody up here. So I don't seek to prevent that. I would like to be a part of that. And so I'm running, and I appreciate your support, and I appreciate the Meadville Tribune and Armstrong Cable and all other entities that are helping us get our word out and get into the homes of our voters.
Thank you. Mr. Sacco?
Don Sacco, and I'd like to thank again the Tribune for allowing us to have this opportunity. I've been a resident of Crawford County for about 50 years, okay, and I've been a teacher at Meadville and Cochrane. I taught in Meadville for 13 years. I'm an English teacher, and I taught at Cochrane for 21 years. I was a football coach and a baseball coach and a drama coach and a National Honor Society advisor. So coming from, being a teacher, I think I have a lot to offer because as a teacher, I saw one side, and now I'm a board member. Currently, I was appointed to take John Amato's place as board member. And in the 2 years that I've been a member, I've seen a lot, and I think seeing things from both sides. I'm able to see what teachers, you see what they want and what they need. And then also I can see from the taxpayer's point of view, funding education, what is important and what isn't important. So that's really my go as a board member.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, start off with the questioning. We'll keep it here with Jan first. What are the most important duties of a school district, and as a school board member, how would you work to achieve those duties?
The most important duties of a school district are ensuring primarily the safety of all children and making sure that every child has the opportunity to realize their full potential. And hopefully in a very creative and innovative way that looks at the child's individual needs and works on their strengths to develop their potential. As a school board member, how to ensure that that happens, I think we need to, when the administration comes with us with what they feel is pertinent and powerful and will address those needs of the students and the district, then we need to ask the right questions to make sure that they are held to the task and headed in the right direction. And I think we just need to ask the right questions and make good decisions.
Okay, thank you. Ross?
Okay. I really believe that the most important thing that the board is doing is simply what the board is doing at that time. I don't believe that there is one thing that is the most important thing. I have seen so many people get onto school board and leave school board with some type of either philosophical approach to it or some sort of ideology that either they tend to be somebody who's very geared towards providing as many benefits to the students or to the curriculum as they can, or the opposite, which tends to be that they don't want to spend any money and they are extremely conservative with the dollars. I really believe that it is important for a school board director to be able to say no. It's very difficult when you have parents, teachers, or anybody who is asking for things. And of course, we have very limited resources, so we are going to have to, at times, say, we're going to have to look at those people, and we're going to have to sometimes say no. But at the same time, we have to always approach this in a balanced way. I really believe that the most important thing that a school director can do is to be a good listener. And in this term of school board, I really would like to approach this as a director who goes in and listens very closely to people and what they desire, what they have to say, and be very deliberate about any decision that I intend to make. Thank you.
Thank you. Melissa?
I think one of the most important areas in the district is that we are in alignment with the mission of the district as presented by the superintendent of the school. And we encourage unity and harmony with the team of 10, that we work together with unity and harmony to promote, because they know what they're doing. They're the experts there. We just simply can't make promises to people and try to promote our own agenda or someone else's agenda, because we're not here for that. But I also think that child safety is probably one of the most important aspects of our district, as well as making sure each student reach their fullest potential, however it takes. I think that we should that teachers and administrators should be able to identify the students that are having problems early on, and with the fundings that we have, make sure that we promote the programs that are necessary for them to reach the fullest potential.
Thank you. Paula?
I am very supportive of the board and administration. However, I take a more child-centered approach, and I'm really focused on children in general. The mission and vision statement, of course, is very important to adhere to and to have it as your guiding star and principle. However, I want to make sure that the whole child is protected and enhanced and, offered all the different opportunities. I also would like to focus on the mental health of children and making sure that with suicide rates and drug use on the rise, I would like to make sure that the whole child is addressed and supported, and that families are supported as much as a school board can do that role, and provide that role. So all these positions are, of course, what we all want to strive for, and I support everybody here. They're all offering very good options, but I'm very child-centered and family-centered.
Could I get you to repeat those questions? It's been a long time
Oh,
since
yeah,
that
I
ended.
understand.
And I hear all this.
You just go as,
Be glad
as
to.
they stated.
What are the most important duties of a school district, and as a school board member, how would you work to achieve those duties?
Okay, again, the most important, thing of a school board or school district is the education of the student, okay? We need to focus on the education of the student. And what I don't really, like to see is when you have board members who go in with an agenda, and that agenda does not benefit the students. I feel that as a board member, I need to go in with an open mind. I mean, I know being a teacher, sometimes I think people think that everything is going to be geared towards that when I make a decision. No, my number one priority, and I think that's what a board member should do, is to focus on what's best for the children and providing them with whatever we can, and again, that we can afford, okay? Not things that we can't have this big dream, we can afford everything, like when we talk about computers. It's great to be able to provide students with these things, but we may not be able to afford them. So we have to provide the students with the best that we can for what we can afford.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Crawford Central, we'll start this with Ross. This is a question with Ross. The Crawford Central's tax millage rate right now is about 51.5 mils. I think it's 51.61. If the recent past is any indication, the district likely will be faced with uncertainty regarding state budget support and the possibility of even cuts to that state support. Given that situation, as a board member, are you prepared to raise taxes in order to ensure the quality of education? And if the district budget needs to be cut, where would you find savings?
Yeah, boy, that's a difficult question, but that's the question that every school district in Pennsylvania is facing right now. These are the most extraordinary times when we're talking about school budgets, because really the reality is that we have a pension crisis which started years ago and continues this day and will continue for some time. And the reality of the situation is that we will continue this year, like last year, and into the future, we will continue to have less money, and we are going to be spending less money from the state, and we're going to have to spend more money, but not necessarily get more for our money. That sounds awful, and that's a recipe that doesn't give you good returns on education, and it certainly doesn't make happy people when we're talking about their tax bill either. Now, you ask, where would we make cuts if we're going to make cuts? I really would be remiss to sit here and say, this is exactly where I intend to make cuts. What I have done in my past years on the board, and what I intend to do into the future, is listen very closely to Guy O'Neill and to Tom Washington and to all of the experts in the school district who are going to tell us where we can afford to cut back. Because we will need to, I guarantee it, with the scenario that we are facing today and will continue to face for years, we're going to be facing this dilemma.
Ms. Burnett?
Yes, I concur. We all know that with challenging fiscal conditions, there's gotta be a lot of creative thinking and collaboration with the administration, teachers, our superintendent. We defer to whatever their recommendations are. That would be hard pressed for us to come up with that because they're the experts there. I agree with pensions and health care contributions on the rise, and the amount each school district has to pay, we are going to be faced with challenges. No one wants to raise taxes. We've been pretty stable with that for the last couple of years. No one wants to raise taxes. But however, when the need arises, I see no other way. But as Ross said, we have a great business manager, and he does a fine job in the district to help balance these. But balancing the budget is a year-long process. So it's tedious, but he does an awesome job. So we defer to their decisions, and sometimes we don't always agree, but we always come to a conclusion, positive conclusion.
Thank you. Paula Jones?
I would like the question repeated.
Sure. Given the situation with the state, there's uncertainty regarding state budget support, and there's even possibility of cuts in that support. Given that, if you're a board member, are you prepared to raise taxes in order to ensure the quality of student education? And if the district budget needs to be cut, where would you find savings?
Okay, I'm going to pull from Ross's statement a little bit, in that I would be remiss without having my head around the numbers and the backdoor knowledge that is already in their portfolios, to come up here and say, I'm going to cut here or cut there. And that would be not just remiss of me, but extremely unintelligent and not a good, safe place to stand for anybody. So yes, I'm willing to increase taxes. I see that I'm looking for a home to own, and I'm looking at the taxes on everybody's, that's a decision maker right there, and I just don't want to increase that burden on anybody without really having some skin in the game too. So I would definitely raise taxes, but I wouldn't do it without feeling the pinch for every individual that I'm, supporting that raise for. Also, I believe that if you're child-centered and you really push the teachers and have them be able to go and be the best teacher that they can be in that classroom, that doesn't necessarily attribute to more costs. It has to do with better teachers, or not just better teachers, but giving them the ability to run with their classroom and make it a noisy learning environment that includes all STEAM, the arts included, just supporting the very inclusive nature of a classroom. That's where I think that we can benefit from. And I also understand that the number one thing that tanks an entity is payroll. So I'd like to make sure that it's very tightened.
We'll have to
Thank you.
hold you at that. Mr. Sacker?
First of all, as a teacher, an English teacher, I never understood, especially as an English teacher, the complexity of a budget like I saw, in Crawford Central. And I really believe my eyes were opened by our business manager, Guy O'Neill. I mean, when he presents us with a budget, even though it is complex, at least some of it is understandable. And I can see why, when people start talking money, it's unbelievable, where this money is going. But I think one of the first solutions to this whole thing, has to come also from the public to put pressure on Harrisburg and our state legislators. Number one, pass a budget on time, do your job. As a school district, we have to have our budget in by the 30th of June. That is also supposed to be our legislators. That's budget supposed to be passed. But yet, they don't do it. So what they do is they put it back on the school districts to come together and put a budget together based on what we might be getting. So I think that's the first step, is to say, look, we need a budget passed, we need it funded. Okay. The second thing about raising taxes, I'm not a big believer in raising taxes for the sake of raising taxes. I think, it's pretty obvious. I've been on the school board now going on 2 years, and I think in that 2 years, we've had to raise the taxes. And I think it's easier to accept a very small percentage than, maybe every other year or so, and not wait until the last minute, and then all of a sudden you have to raise all this money. So I think those are, like I said, going back to the state and then taking a look at the budget and seeing where can we cut, if we can cut.
Jan?
I'm going to sound probably repetitive at this point, but would I raise taxes? I absolutely would, not lightly, but I would if I was given the information that dictated that it was necessary to raise taxes in order to maintain the educational system as is. With reference to what Paula was saying, is actually, the good news is the research shows that there's not a direct correlation to money and great education. So I think our emphasis needs to be where we can control it, and that is providing a great, excellent learning environment. And it's going to take an innovator mindset to do that. And so it's not necessarily always a skill set, but a mindset that, yes, we can do this, we can be innovative, we can use strength-based leadership, we can do student-driven learning and decision-making, and keep our focus narrow and know where we want to go with our educational system. So I think with that, and quite honestly, I believe that our superintendent is headed in that direction for our district. So that's the good news. And when it would become to making decisions with regard to tax cuts, I really truly would defer to Guy O'Neill and Tom Washington, because they will know where the cuts can be made in order to have the least amount of impact on the student.
Okay, next question to Melissa there. This week, a school district in Western Pennsylvania, they had teachers vote to go on strike. How would you rate your working relationship with the teachers in Crawford Central?
How would I rate my relationship with
The school board's relationship with Crawford Central?
my experience on the board for the last 4 years has been very excellent. I know a lot of the teachers in the district. I know a lot of the administrators in the district, and influx of students. Living in Meadville, you kind of know. So I base my opinion of students by what of teachers by what the students tell me and say. Their achievements and their excitement and their energy, and coming home. And I have, the Burnett family is really a huge family in Meadville, so I have several nieces and nephews and great nieces and great nephews, and they're all smart and they all like school, and I like this teacher and I like that teacher, and they go to all different schools, first district, second district, MASH. I think I would base my opinion on any district teachers by how the students rate them.
Okay, thank you. Paula?
I cannot address the working relationship between the board and the teachers. I can state that as a mother of 3 children that are in Crawford County, one is in MAMS, one is in MASH, and one actually is in the READ program. And we've taken full advantage of all the services in Crawford County that we can because of some situations in our family. And I have, across the board, gotten really good, not just vibes, but I've had great relationships with teachers, administrators. Everybody seems to have the focus of the children, and everybody seems very willing to work with children where they're at, which is very important for me because I don't have a favorite child. I don't want everything to be just geared towards Aaron or just geared towards Molly or Johnny. They're all very different children, and the school has to fit the nuances of each child. So I can't address the personal working relationships. I can address the fact that if you make somebody feel valued and important and not dismissed, then you can have a good relationship with anybody. So I would say that also, Dawn mentioned something about educating a teacher in regards to financial agendas. If you only see that you're taking away something and you don't see why, the reason behind it, then there can be discord. So I believe that when you're sitting down and you're saying we're taking this away, then there has to be a rational reason why, and a good working relationship, not just with the public and the taxpayer, not just with the student and the administration, but also with the teachers and the staff, and to make them feel supported and worth the investment.
Okay.
Could you repeat that again?
Sure.
Sorry.
No. Earlier
that
this
too long?
week, a school district in West Pennsylvania went on strike, or teachers went on strike in that school district. How would you classify or rate the school board's relationship with the teachers union?
Okay, just, I'm not being too far removed from a teacher in the district. I've been out 2 years, but I would say overall, I think it's a very good relationship. I think the teachers and the board, at least from what I know, just being a board member for 2 years, it's hard for me to say because I know the teachers so well. I've had a pretty good working relationship, but I think right now as a board member, I think overall the board has a very, very good relationship with the teachers. When you start talking about the strike, I think that whole thing, when you talk about the district having a strike, I think that is something that almost all teachers would not ever want to approach in this district. And I really feel strongly that they would work whatever it took. That's what kind of a relationship the board has, I think, with the teachers.
Thank you. Jan?
If you had asked me this question 2 years ago, it would be completely different than it is now. 2 years ago, the morale within the district, across the district, was very low. And actually, when we were looking at hiring Mr. Washington, that was one of our greatest concerns, was how can we repair this relationship? There was a wall between the board and the teachers. And morale was low. Relationships were not well managed. And when we brought Mr. Washington on, that was one of our big reasons why we brought him on, is because he believes firmly in relationships and how they impact student learning. And so over the past 2 years, he has worked really hard at building relations between the board and the teachers and the board and the administrators and the administrators and the teachers all around the entire district. And I would say it has really improved drastically over the last 2 years, and he continues to recognize the importance of relationship building and trust building. And I would say that our most recent negotiations with the support staff, as well as the teachers union, is reflective of that.
Okay. Thank you. Ross?
Yeah, I think that it's almost well, I don't want to say that. I really would be surprised if strike would be in anybody's mind in Crawford Central School District. And I can say that because what I have seen in the boardroom has really impressed me. I have seen a superintendent, Tom Washington, who I believe truly values the human resources of the school district. And he makes a point to show that. At every board meeting, I have seen him go above and beyond to show the board the value of the teachers and the accomplishments of the teachers, and I think that the teachers know that. I also believe that this is, and Jan said this as well, this is something that I've seen as an improvement over the last few years. I think that Mr. Washington has taken a situation which was less good, not as good as it is now, and made it into a very, I think, a much stronger relationship. Is it perfect? I don't see that it's perfect. I think that it's very good, and I think that it is a very much a team effort between the teachers, the administration, and the board. Much so, even more so than I've seen in the past.
All right, thank you.
All right, the next question, Paula, we'll begin with you. Crawford Central School Board earlier this year had a controversy with one of the board members, Glenn Tuttle. He was posting incendiary comments on social media. It created quite a fervor in the community. Tuttle subsequently was removed from committee assignments, and the board even voted 7-1 to remove him from the joint operating committee of the Crawford County Career and Technical Center. And they also took away his appointment as the board's representative of the Pennsylvania State School Boards Association. Do you think the board handled this correctly? Why or why not? And how would you deal with such a colleague if you're on the board?
Okay, thank you very much for that question. I do believe that they handled it appropriately. And I really, truly appreciate the time that they took to do it well. It wasn't a rash decision. It was a great, timely procession through very murky waters, because it's freedom of speech and all those things that make us Americans. And so it's very tricky to do anything where you push on somebody else's rights in any way. And so, although Mr. Tuttle had a right to say what he says, he thinks, but as a representative of the school board, in particular, then it should not be that you can go that deep into the ocean. And I believe that you should. I am a very big Facebook person, and I am very into speaking my mind. I do not keep my private life private. I do not do all those things that make me confined. I will rebel against anything that makes me confined. So I appreciate somebody's freedom of speech, and I think that they handle it very well, and I'm assuming that it was all very unanimous, and I appreciate how they did it. But that's one of the reasons why I'm running, because people were upset with that. And so I feel very strongly about education, and I thought that this would be a good fit for me. Thank you.
Mr. Sack?
Okay, I guess it's, and I was involved, in this, being a board member, and it could have turned into a very volatile situation, okay? But I think our board president, I'm just gonna, handled it and very, very well. I mean, told people to keep their cool, let's take it step by step and see what we can do. Because a lot of people out there, especially at the one meeting, there were so many suggestions. It really got out of hand with some of the people, and they were expecting the board to do things that they couldn't legally do. And I think our board president was able to, keep in touch with the board members and say, this is what we can do. Maybe we should do this. Let's follow it on down the line. Let's not let it get out of hand, and let's do what we can do. And I feel that the board did all that they were capable of doing legally. I don't feel there was anything left as far as you can't remove him from the board, you can't do any of that. So they took it to the furthest step that they could, and I would have handled it exactly the same way.
Thank you. Jan?
It was a very challenging situation. I respect Mr. Tuttle, and I respect his position on the board. But it did put the board in a very challenged position. We did not take it lightly. We had many, many discussions with the public. We honored and listened to their concerns. We had discussions amongst ourselves. We had ongoing discussions with our solicitor. And our decisions did not come lightly, and they weren't just my decision. It was a whole board decision. And the board came together as a whole and handled it very well, I thought. And upon reflection, I would not have done anything differently.
Thank you.
Yeah, what happened last year, I guess it was last year, is certainly the number one thing that I heard from people when I went around and passed around my petition and talked to people and told them I wanted to run for school board. This was definitely the number one thing on people's minds. And so, I really believe that it is imperative that anybody that assumes a public position, whether it be on school board or council or anything, local, state, national, it's imperative that a person who assumes that position conduct themselves with decorum, with civility, and with respect. And when I say respect, what I mean is we all have opinions. Sometimes we have very strong opinions. And this individual had some very strong opinions. But the way he went about communicating, exercising his First Amendment rights for certain, but the way he did it was not respectful of the office of the president, or respectful of people who had other opinions, and that's not right. I'm not a believer in the Charles Barkley school of thought when it comes to being a role model. Charles Barkley's somewhat known for at one time saying that I'm not out to be anybody's role model. Well, when you're in certain positions, you are a role model, and you have to conduct yourself appropriately. The worst part about it, I know I'm running out of time, but the worst part about it is that this board conducts important business. But in the winter and spring of 2017, all that anybody knew about was Facebook, and that's not good for this school board.
Mr. Net?
What I would have to say would be rhetorical as well, but while we do encourage everyone's participation, looking back 2 years ago in the climate of the district, and when Mr. Washington came aboard, and one of the things that he did for us as a board, we had a retreat, and we spent countless hours developing core values, which were respect, teamwork, integrity, and compassion. And when that happened, because he was a part of that and he was there, and when that happened, I think we were all so shocked that he just completely dismissed the theme of what we were working toward and disrespected everything that we had put so much work into. I feel the board handled it very appropriately. We together, with our leadership, we did everything within the confines of the law that we could do. We did listen and respect the community. They came in, they voiced their opinions, they were angry, we were embarrassed, we were angry, but there wasn't a lot we could do, but what we could do, we did. And we removed him from the leadership roles and the representation of those boards, and we assumed those roles. And I do believe that there's a standard. When you are representing a group, you have to be respectful, and you have to represent it with pride and integrity and with respect. So I think we did a great job in removing that thorn.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next question goes to Dawn. School districts periodically have to hire superintendents and other high-level administrative personnel from outside of the area. As part of that person's contract, should Crawford Central require the person to move within the boundaries of the district within a defined period, or the contract becomes void? Why or why not?
No, I don't feel that that should be a requirement, because I think when you hire a person, whether you know, a superintendent or whatever, you're hiring that person, and again, this is for the job that you feel they are capable of doing. You're not hiring for their residency, okay? You know, if you require them to change the residency, you may end up turning down a person who, you know, one of the best in his field. So no, I don't feel that being a resident should make the difference in hiring or not.
Okay, thanks. Jen?
No, I do not believe it should be part of the contract. I would hope that when you are in that process of looking and hiring, one of your main questions and concerns would be the commitment to the community, whether they're a resident or not, because I think community commitment is important. So as long as, and I think Mr. Washington's a perfect example. He resides outside of the district, but his commitment to this community and his involvement in this community is paramount. And I have seen other superintendents that resided within the district that did not become as actively involved in the community as he has. So I think that is something to be cognizant of when you are hiring, is their commitment to the community. But do they have to reside to be committed to the district and the community? No.
Take it. Russ?
I would never give a pat answer to the question of, do you always do this or do you always not do this? I would say that there is value in having your administration and people who are employed by the school district be a part of the community, and to know what's going on in the community and be a part of the mesh of the community on a day-to-day level. At the same time, the very real situation that any school district or employer deals with is that if you were to impose that type of a requirement, you are possibly restricting yourself from getting the services of somebody who is a very strong candidate, but not for personal reasons willing to move. And we all can think of circumstances where we personally would not want to move. So my answer is that I would approach that on subjectively on a case-by-case basis.
Thank you. Listen.
I think I would agree with Ross to that degree that we should probably look at it subjectively. I agree with Jan also that with the level of commitment to the district being paramount, our current superintendent has proven himself. I go to everything and I see him at everything. I ask him, do you ever go home? Do you live here now? Do you have an apartment here on the side? You know, so it's kind of like a joke, but I think that the commitment level to the district is what we should look at. And I think that we have a prime example of someone that is committed to the district.
Thank you. Paula?
I'm going to be a rebel here. I believe that they should have to reside in the school district, and I understand that Mr. Washington is highly valuable, and but he might be the exception to the rule. And I believe that the rule should be live within the county that your territory that you're providing care for. My father was superintendent of schools for Pencrest, and he had to live within Pencrest boundaries. And that did not prevent him from coming. When his commitment level was to Pencrest, it was full boat. If he had to come across 80 back and forth every time that he had to show up for school, it would never be a good situation. Also, there are plenty of very, very great educators and business people that reside within Crawford County and Crawford Central that have gone for their schooling to be able to be a superintendent. So I'm of the mindset that you should have to reside within Crawford Central to be under contract with it.
Thank you. Thank you. Jan, we'll start this question with you. How have the Common Core standards affected Crawford Central students since they were fully implemented in Pennsylvania? That was what, back 2013-14, I believe. And what role, if any, should those standards continue to play in the future within the district?
Well, I think the idea behind the Common Core, if I understand it correctly, was to provide equitability across the state, and to help ensure that all students are getting a fair and equal opportunity to learn and grow in the right direction. And I think it has impacted the quality of education in Crawford Central to a degree. I think you have to keep those directives in perspective, because the everyday quality of teaching really significantly impacts the student. I do think that Crawford Central has worked very hard in aligning their curriculum with the Common Core. And so it has impacted the students positively.
And as far as what role should those, I mean, should they continue to play in the future? Is there any role that those?
You know the state's going to dictate that. And sometimes that's a good thing, and sometimes that's not a good thing. I think Crawford Central should always be cognizant of making sure that students are having equitable approaches to the curriculum and their reaching their potential.
Okay, thank you. Ross?
I think I'm going to take a kind of a different approach to this answer and try to answer it at the same time, appropriately, I hope. As a board member, I really strongly believe that I have a certain role, whether that be on Crawford Central School Board or any other board that I serve on. My role is largely as somebody who oversees, who manages business, who manages a budget. And one of the most important things that a board member can do on Crawford Central, and especially on a school board, is to know his or her boundaries. I truly believe that when it comes to delving deeply into questions of educational philosophy, educational approach, how do we conduct the day in and day out business of education? That is exactly what I am not going to try to dictate, and what I am going to leave to the experts. The best thing that I can do on a topic like that is listen, respond, but I'm certainly not going to impose any authority that would be misplaced.
Okay, thank you.
I personally have not yet had the opportunity to sit down and really get a full understanding of how the Common Core has impacted our district. When I read about it, it's unclear. I'm not quite sure if every student in the district is being impacted by it, from what I understand. I understand that students have different IEPs, they have different learning abilities, they have varied learning styles, and some are left behind, some don't, So I don't know if it would be equitable, because everyone learns at a different pace, different way, as I said, varied styles. So until I got a full understanding or see some data associated with it, I can't answer that question the way I would like to. Thank you.
I'm going to answer like a mom. I hate Common Core. I remember in 8th grade, my oldest son, Andrew, came home with algebra. And he had said to me, "Mom, will you do this with me?" Which meant, "Will you do it for me?" And I said, "No, I did algebra. Now it's your turn to do algebra." But now I can't do my 4th graders. When my 4th grader came home, now they're older, I didn't understand what the goal was in their learning. So I think that Common Core misses in a big way with parent involvement. They send these worksheets home for you to do with your child, but they don't send a little manual,
You need it.
telling us how to do it.
You need it.
And and you're looked at as such a bad parent if your child doesn't do their homework, or sometimes I had to write across the paper. I didn't understand the directions. So if I don't understand the directions, they don't. And so I really don't like Common Core, and the very words make me rise up in angst. So no, I don't want Common Core, but like Jan said, you're driven by the state on this guideline. So but I have very large opinions on Common Core. Dislike.
Don?
Okay, as a teacher, I was involved, my last few years of teaching. In fact, this is probably one of the things that kind of pushed me into retirement. I mean, I can understand, I'm going to go with what Ross says. You have to leave, I didn't understand it even as a teacher, okay? Maybe I wasn't in it long enough. But as a board member, I'm going to leave some of those decisions up to the people who really do understand it. And again, like you said, the state is going to mandate what we do anyway. What I have seen with the Common Core, what it's done, it's taken a lot of, coming from point of view of a teacher, it's taken a lot of the personal contact out of the classroom. It was almost like we were educating and like robots. That one-on-one teacher-student interaction was beginning to disappear. And I think that's one of the negative things that I saw with Common Core. But again, we can only do what the state tells us we have to do. And I think the state is trying to, everybody, like they doesn't learn the same speed at the same level. We're not going to be able to turn out a room full of robots who all know the same thing. And I think that's what they're trying to do.
Thank you.
Okay, next question goes to Ross. What single change that the school board could make would have the most significant impact on the students?
I don't know that I can think of any single change that the school board would make to have a impact on the students. I think that, here I go again, I guess. Basically, the way I operate as a board member is kind of like a shortstop on the baseball team. I field them as they come to me. If it's a line drive, I'm going to stand up and take a line drive. And if it's a grounder, I'm going to take a grounder, but I'm certainly not going to, I'm going to respond. And I think that if the administration is presenting something to the school board which needs to be addressed, then that is going to be what I'm going to be paying attention to. I'm not a candidate who has, we call it an agenda, and we've all seen candidates who have an agenda. I'm a candidate who is going to, I hope, be level-headed, listen, and approach every question with as much deliberation as I can give it, and I couldn't even imagine an issue that would potentially take priority over all of the rest. Maybe if I thought about it for an hour, I might come up with one, but I think I would field them as they come.
All right, thanks.
Can you repeat
Melissa?
that?
Sure. What single change that the school board could make would have the most significant impact on students?
That's pretty hard to answer as well, but I'd like to see us attract all the best teachers in the district that are sensitive to the varied learning styles. And I'm not saying that we don't have that, but I do know that there's more needed. The creativity piece be supported by the district. I'm not talking about the mandates, but I'm talking about giving them leverage to be more creative and innovative in their teaching styles. I know that had been a problem in the past. I haven't revisited that with some of the teachers that I had spoken with, but I do see it better, and the climate is better. So I think relationships and those type of things with administration would breed more of that creative and innovative teaching style for our district.
Thank you. Paula?
Can you repeat it, please?
Sure. What single change that the school board could make would have the most significant impact on the students?
Thank you. I don't believe that there's a single elixir to any problem or situation. And I don't believe that in the broad spectrum of life that families and children are directly impacted by any single decision that any one of us could make in their lives. All I know is that families need to be supported. And in order to do that, you have to take in every individual child as much as possible for their individuality. And I don't, maybe the reason why I responded about poor so harshly is that it makes everybody a robot and all the same. And children are not the same, and nor should they be. We need people all across society they have different roles and different values and different worths. I value my garbage man the same as I value my superintendent. Everybody has a role and a part to play in society as a whole. And so I don't think that anything that anybody else can do can impact that. All we can do is make sure that individuals are supported as much as possible and that there's a large spectrum of roles that they can play. So having integrative relationships with the VOTEC and Edinburgh and Allegheny and everywhere across the board that teaches LTI, a trade. That's the important piece, the relationship piece should be the focus. Thank you.
Thank you.
I really can't come up with right now, even as a board member, a single change that I, can think of that would, change any, as far as the students are concerned. I guess the only thing I could say is we as a board or as a board member should just continue to support our teachers and our students in any way we can. And if something comes up, take a look at that on an individual basis. But as far as one single thing right now, I can't think of any.
Thanks. Jen?
Yeah, I would have to agree with almost all the comments that have been made. Education is just a much too complicated process. Learning is a much too complicated process to find one single factor that will impact or change it significantly. But as a board, and as Ross keeps reiterating also, our role isn't to identify that. That's the role of our administrators, and hopefully we have hired a strong superintendent, and he has a good, strong working relationship with really strong leaders in the school, and then we find good, strong teachers. And then we work as a whole unit with the community, with parents, with students, and board members in the decision-making process that the administration brings to us. So I think that's the one single factor, if we're going to find any, to work as a cohesive group.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next question, we'll start off with Melissa. Earlier this year, legislation approved making changes to the state public School Employee Retirement System Act. I believe it's Act 5, 2017 is the number. And it's moving away from a defined benefit or pension style system. Now, starting in 2019, those future public school employees are going to have to choose from one of two kind of side-by-side hybrid defined benefit and defined contribution plans, or just a standalone defined contribution plan. Now, no changes are going to be made to retirement benefits for current employees of school districts, but they're going to have the option of choosing one of those new designs. I realize this is a very complicated financial issue, but do you think this will help school districts in the long run, or do you think it may hurt districts by not having as many people go into teaching in this state in the future?
I think the not going into teaching is a current phenomenon. I'm a recent retiree of Edinburgh University and have worked very closely with a lot of departments, and education is one of the least favored fields anymore. I believe that may be part of the reason. I do believe that it will impact the future. Retirement is very a serious piece of a person's life and lifestyle. And a lot of people, teachers don't quit jobs usually, they retire from jobs. So if the contribution for medical and those type things and pension, well, the pension may not change, but the medical and their contributions toward those things, I think it would impact. I think that may be one of the reasons that I retired this year, because everything changed that way. And I couldn't afford to lose what I had worked so hard for. So after 30 years, I decided that this was the time. So there's a lot of people taking the buyouts now. There's a lot of people that will probably take them in order not to lose their benefits down the road. Yes, I think it will affect the future.
Thank you. Paula?
I think that that impacting new hires will not affect the teaching piece. Because when you're a 17-year-old trying to figure out your niche in life and you love kids and you think to yourself, I'm going to be a teacher, I don't think they think about pension. They think about, where can I go to a school that will be highly accepted as a good school. I went to an education school, and when I went into teaching, I did not choose that because of the pension. I chose that because of the children. And I don't think that going in you would look at that, because I don't think pensions are a common feature anymore across the board. I think people are struggling all the way. And these pensions really do bring down the whole playing field. Like I think Ross mentioned, the pensions, the teaching salaries, don't impact the student's learning. So when you're feeding money into a system for pension, it's detracting from the money that could go into the individual student and benefit that child. So I don't think that it will stop people from going in, because I think there's an intrinsic drive in people to be certain things, and it was an intrinsic drive for myself and my sisters and my brother to be teachers. And although I didn't fulfill that, agenda, I'm working towards it still with my master's. So I don't believe that would detract from going in, and I also believe that it would be beneficial in the long run, so that we didn't have a noose around our neck that was constantly tightening for pensions. Thank you.
Thank you. Don?
No, I don't think that changing the pensions, would impact the number of people going into the field of education, because, like she said, that's not one of the primary reasons for going into education. You have to love what you're doing to get into education. I know myself, when I started in teaching, I had no clue, did not understand anything about pension. All I know is my check, there was a certain amount was coming out, was going to my pension. I did not begin to understand the pension idea until about the year that I retired. Okay, so no clue. So, it's something that I learned. And there are too many other factors, I think, that are keeping students from the field of education. I don't know all of them, but I think some of it, furthering the education, how much education is necessary to actually teach high school. Do you really need a master's? Do you need more? And I think there are other factors like, job security and things like that. So as far as the pension is concerned, no, I do not think that would impact the number of students getting into education.
Thank you. Jay?
Yeah, pension reform is necessary. I mean, there's no doubt about it. In order for our districts to maintain themselves fiscally, pension reform is necessary. Is it going to impact people going into education? I'm not sure that in and of itself is. There is something going on with regard to people going into education, because they are predicting that 5 years out from now, we're not going to have enough teachers to fill the positions across the state. So there is a concern as to why people are not going into the field of education. I'm not sure that it solely rests on pension. That may be a piece of the pie, but we are going to have to be innovative in finding ways to encourage people to go into the field if we want to keep our teacher supply up.
Yeah, I feel that this is probably one of the biggest issues that Pennsylvania faces right now. I really believe that the defined benefit plan was a terrible thing, that not only education will be impacted for years to come, but all of Pennsylvania, even non-education, will be impacted. It's really something that has almost crippled our budget, and the school district's budget is going to continue, as I said earlier, to be more and more toward non-educational purposes as we continue to pay off the astronomical debt which we have accumulated now by a plan that was totally non-responsive to the market. The defined contribution plan is more of a 401k plan, and it is responsive to the market. I don't think there's any way that a person would simply say, I'm not going to be a teacher because I'm not going to get a defined benefit plan, because there are no defined benefit plans anywhere else. No private employers have defined benefit plans. The only defined benefit plans that I've ever heard of are through PSERS and SERS, both government pension plans, and quite frankly, only a government could do it because they can raise taxes, whereas a corporation can't raise taxes. If somebody is inclined to not be a teacher because they are not getting a defined benefit plan, then that's probably somebody who was moving towards the wrong occupation to begin with.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, we'll ask our last question tonight before we get a chance to have a close. We'll start with Paula on this one. Earlier tonight we had a couple questions, or at least a couple comments about the safety of the students. Do you have any concerns for the students of Crawford Central, for their safety?
Of course. Of course. And it's not just in the schools. It's on the streets, it's in the homes, it's everywhere. You can't be a Facebook user without seeing somebody say, look at this silver minivan that went past trying to solicit my teenager, off the streets. Of course I'm concerned. I'm concerned about bullying behaviors. I'm concerned about the bully acting out. I'm worried about outside individuals coming in. I'm worried about everything. That's me, I'm a worrier. So yes, I have severe concerns. And I think that in the spring we were asked a question in regards to whether we support devices when you go into the school. What was it? Electronic reading devices or whatever, so that you can see if somebody's bringing in a weapon. Of course, I stand for that. I was a substitute teacher in Allentown School District, and they had those, and it didn't impact the inside workings of the school. And yet it did make you feel safer because there were entities within the school that were criminals on the outside of school. And the longer the process takes to graduate, you're inviting more and more of that to come into the school district because they're acting out in different ways because they're not getting their needs met. And yes, I have severe concerns, and that is one of the most restrictive venues that I would say. I don't want to restrict anybody's rights. However, I would like to restrict access to weaponry and to my daughter right now is seeing firsthand bullying behaviors. And the teachers can see the problem children sometimes, but sometimes you can't. And I really appreciate the most structure at the door as possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
I really do not have a concern. I'm going to take the exact opposite. I do not have a concern for safety. I have a granddaughter in 3rd grade in one of the elementary schools. And I never think about, I never really have a concern for, I feel she is safe in this school district. as a teacher, I know I saw bullying, and bullying has been going on for years, okay? Now it's taken a step with the electronic bullying and so on, but I think overall, if you look at each of the individual schools, you look at the administration and the teachers within the school, I think they pretty much take care of the bullying as best that they can. I mean, you know, your hands are tied up to a certain point, but I know as a teacher, if I saw something that even looked like bullying, I made sure I put a stop to it immediately, okay? And I think that's the attitude of most teachers and administrators in this school district. So I really don't have a concern for, you know, the safety of students and even the teachers. I think it's handled quite well by our administration.
Thank you. Jan?
Do I have a concern about how our district manages safety? No, I don't. I think our students are very safe. Will there always be issues that come up at different times? Absolutely. But I think our district is very cognizant and has many programs in place. Our teachers are trained with new ALICE training. We have resource officers available. We have school-wide behavior support plans in place. We have individual behavior support plans in place. We have teachers trained in intervening when they need to intervene and doing it in a physically appropriate manner. I think we have lots of character education programs in place through our guidance. We have Alveus training, which is for bullying. We have all kinds of things in place that our teachers, our administrators, and other staff are very cognizant of and intervene appropriately when needed. So I think our students are very safe.
Thank you. Ross?
Yeah, do I think am I concerned about safety? Do I think the students are safe? You know, I'll take that word safety and probably turn it a little bit more into well-being. I think that there is physical safety, and I think that there is emotional safety, and I really believe that we are doing a lot better than we did when we were young. We're more aware of these things, and we address them appropriately. I believe that Crawford Central School District specifically is addressing it appropriately, and part of that is because it comes from the top down. I'm impressed with the teachers. I think that the teachers have provided not just a physically safe place, but an emotionally safe place for kids. And I'm so happy to say that I think that's more of a role that teachers are willing to accept today than they did 25 years ago.
Melissa?
As Janice already said, our emergency school safety plans and procedures are in place. I have no concern about our district's safety. Our resource officer is he's a key player in all the components of our safety in our schools. So I think overall, with the trainings and the interventions that we have in place, and the teachers are sensitive to implementing these things, I think that we have very little to worry about. But what I do worry about sometimes is when they're leaving school. I've heard of incidences that happen off the school grounds as students are walking home and those sorts of things. I'm not sure what's in place for that. Some of these kids walk 2 miles. I understand that there's fights. I understand that there's bullying outside of the school district. Inside of the district, I don't have a problem with that. I do sense the need for maybe some outside intervention on the way home, on the street corners, in the football fields, you know, those type things. The policies we have are on the website, so parents are aware. Hopefully they're looking at things like that as the need arises. I think that overall, I think that we have a pretty safe district.
Okay, thank you very much. We are going to conclude the questioning, as we said. And what we're going to do now is give each candidate up to 2 minutes to make a closing statement. We're going to go in reverse order, so we're going to start with Dawn. And Don, you have up to 2 minutes for closing remarks.
Okay, this is probably the hardest part of the whole thing, but as far as a board member, when I first applied for it, I thought, why do I want to put myself into this position? I retired, I've got a comfortable, I'm doing fine. And then I thought, I'm going to have grandchildren coming up through this district. I had 3 boys in the district, and they all graduated in Crawford Central, and they're all very successful. Crawford Central is, I feel, one of the better school districts. I didn't go to school in a small district like this. I went to school in Pittsburgh. And I saw the difference when I came up here, and I saw the difference in a school district like Crawford Central. And so when I applied for the position, I said, look, if I get it, this was for John Amato's position, which was, he had 2 years left. I said, if I get it, I'm going to be committed to it just like I was as a teacher. Okay? As a teacher, I took it serious enough that I didn't take sick days. I never called in for a sick day. I did have 2 medical things that I had no choice, but I never called in a sick day. As a board member for the last 2 years, you know how seriously I take this, and I would do the same thing if I get reelected. I have not missed a committee meeting, work session, or a board meeting. So I said, when I do something, I do it all the way, and I take it seriously. And so if I'm elected, I will continue to do the same thing, working with a very good board, it's very cooperative. And so that's my reason for wanting to be reelected, is to continue the quality education that Crawford Central is able to provide at a cost. And again, it's hard to say, but at a cost I think that most people can afford.
Thank you. Paula?
Hi, again. Hello again. I guess if I was going to piggyback on Don and say why I'm running for school board, number one, it was an idea posed to me by many people when Mr. Tuttle's issues came to light and to the forefront. And the issue there took the board out of the normal business workings of boarddom. So as far as myself, I'm a peacekeeper by nature. I like to work in a collaborative team environment. And I'm of a firm belief that not everybody has to be cookie cutter and alike. And all these entities up here tend to, they're all their own person, and they're very worthy in their own rights. I am bringing my skills as the peacekeeper, the mom, the educator, as a different voice perhaps. I have children enrolled in this school district, and I want to see all children succeed. And I am a firm believer also in the arts in particular. And with cuts being on our neighboring school boards and school districts of the arts, I felt that it was my role perhaps to come and be the protector of the arts. And that's why I'm running, to protect the arts and to support children and families in general. Thank you.
Melissa?
I believe my participation on the board for the past 4 years has prepared me to continue to make meaningful contributions as a board member. As we address the needs of our diverse population, I believe that a diverse board is very important. I believe that the public education prepares our students with the necessary skills to live and thrive in life, and we're fortunate that our community values that as well. If elected to the Crawford Central School Board, I will continue to support continued improvement and taking our education and our students to a higher level of attainment. And we want all our students to succeed. So my platform would be academic success for all students. I will listen, continue to listen, and to direct the concerns of the community and to the parents of the students to the appropriate channels. and work with them to hopefully reach the goal that's necessary for students to, again, achieve their highest attainment. We do value the input of the community. We value the input of the parents, teachers, students, and administrators, and the fellow board members. We have a great board, and we continue to make positive strides in helping our students reach their fullest potential. So I respectfully ask for your vote on November 7th.
Thank you. Ross?
Okay, if you're here in the audience or watching on television, you're probably doing so because you want to figure out who you want to vote for. And so I thought I'd just kind of list a few things that I think would either define or distinguish how I would behave as a school board director. First of all, I really believe that it's important to be a listener. And when I say that, what I mean is I mean that on different levels. First of all, I think it's important to listen to the administration. I think that we need to remember that we have our opinions, we have our biases, but we're not the front line. We're not the boots on the ground. And we got to remember that there are people out there that are very well trained, and this is really their responsibility. A good board member draws boundaries on those sorts of things. I would listen to teachers very much. They are the boots on the ground. They are the people in the classroom. They know what's going on more than anybody. And I would definitely want to be a listener with regard to teachers and parents too. Parents know what's going on better than some guy who sits in a business meeting twice a month. So I want to be a good listener. I also want to be able to be somebody who says no. And I believe that in the 8 years that I was on school board prior, I was somebody that was willing to say no. That kind of sounds negative, but at the same time, I have seen that it's extremely important to always recognize that there are limited resources, and sometimes you have to see the shiny product which you're being presented with and say, sorry, we can't afford it. Last, I want to say that I want to keep the ship stable, and that's because I truly believe that the pension crisis is bad. And I do not, I think it's very important for every board member to keep the dire circumstances in consideration at all times.
To cut you off there. Dan?
Thank you again to the Meadville Tribune for giving us this opportunity to exchange our ideas and share our ideas and thoughts with the public so that they can make an informed decision. I believe that being a school director is an enormous responsibility, and it's not one that I have taken lightly over the last 4 years, and I would not take it lightly over the next 4 years if you would choose to re-elect me. I believe that as a school director, you can't act alone. You need to be open and be a team member with other board members, with the administration, with teachers, with students, with parents, with the community at large. I think it's really important, too. We are going to have a lot of financial challenges ahead, and I think fiscal prudency is owed to our taxpayers when we make a decision. If you would see to it to re-elect me, I would be very gracious, and I hope that I can continue to be a part of a team that creates a culture where all our students feel inspired to learn and become better citizens because of their experience at Crawford Central School District. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Again, we'd like to thank all the candidates for appearing here tonight and their willingness to do so. It gave an opportunity for the public to hear their views. We do want to remind you that the election is November 7th. We hope you get out and vote for the candidate of your choice. As a reminder, tonight's forum will be shown on Armstrong Cable Channel 23 and 100. Be the first of a number of viewings, I'm sure, up until the election. First one is Saturday afternoon around 3 p.m. Again, we want to thank the candidates, Don Sacco, Paula Jo Lynch, Melissa Burnett, Ross Prather, and Jan Filippo for appearing tonight and for their willingness to hear the questions and answer them as well. I'm Keith Gushard, and this is Rick Green, and on behalf of the Meadville Tribune, we bid you a good evening. But before we do that totally, do want to remind you we have one more forum coming up, and that'll be next Wednesday, October the 25th. That'll be at 7 o'clock out at the Sagertown High School for the Penncrest School District School Board candidates. Again, thank you for joining us, and have a good evening.